Welcome. If you are listening to this right now, I know something about you. You're someone who is deeply curious. Maybe you're facing a massive, really challenging project at work that has you pulling your hair out. Or maybe you're prepping for a high-stakes meeting where you got to prove your worth. Or maybe you're just on your morning commute looking for that perfect aha moment to fuel your day and get your mindset right.
Right, just trying to find that spark.
Exactly. And whatever brought you here, you are in the exact right place. Because today's deep dive is completely custom-tailored for you. We've got a singular mission today. We are looking at just one piece of source material. It's a brief excerpt by Frank Conandri titled "The Power to Continue When Quitting Isn't an Option."
It's an incredibly brief piece of writing, actually. I mean, if you were to just glance at it, you could probably read the whole thing in under 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's that short.
But that brevity is really deceptive. Every single word in this text has been chosen with absolute precision. It is just incredibly dense with psychological insight.
And that is exactly why we're dedicating an entire deep dive to it. We live in this world of total information overload, where the default is to just skim, scroll, move on to the next shiny object. But not today.
No, we really need to sit with this one.
We're going to slow down. We're going to extract every ounce of nuance from Conandri's text about the nature of resilience, persistence, and what it actually takes to keep going when everything in your body and mind just wants to stop.
And it does want to stop. That's human nature.
Right. So, okay, let's unpack this, because the author starts with a premise that caught me completely off guard. It doesn't start with some overly enthusiastic hustle culture cheerleading. It starts by validating the exact opposite. Conandri points out that there are moments when quitting actually feels reasonable.
Yeah.
I read that and honestly felt a wave of relief. Because usually, quitting is treated like this, this massive moral failure or a sign of weakness.
It is a profoundly empathetic way to open a discussion on resilience. By acknowledging that quitting can feel entirely reasonable, the author instantly disarms that heavy guilt we all carry when we are tempted to give up.
Yeah, it just takes the pressure right off.
Exactly. We are given permission to look objectively at why we want to walk away, and Conandri outlines the specific conditions that create this feeling. It happens, he notes, when the effort seems vastly greater than the reward.
Which is just math.
Right. That isn't weakness. That is a pure cost-benefit analysis happening in your brain. You're putting in endless hours, pouring out your energy, maybe you're missing dinners with your family, and the scale is completely tipped.
The return on investment just isn't there.
It's not there. So when you look at it through that logical lens, stepping away looks like a very smart calculation.
I hear that, but how do we differentiate that smart calculation to quit from just making an excuse because we're exhausted? Because the text brings up a second condition for when quitting feels justified, which is when the silence after hard work feels discouraging. And that phrase, silence after hard work, man, that is painfully relatable. You can do the work, put together an incredible proposal, present it to the board, and crickets.
Let us really examine that specific phrase in a professional context. Silence after hard work. We operate in environments where we are deeply conditioned to expect immediate feedback loops.
Right, like constantly.
You send an email, you get a reply, you fix a bug in the code, the software works. But when you are tackling high-level complex projects like shifting a company's culture or launching a completely new product line, the feedback loop breaks down entirely.
It totally vanishes.
You pour months of energy into a project and receive zero immediate validation. That silence creates a psychological void. And human nature, particularly in high achievers, usually fills that void with imposter syndrome.
Oh, absolutely. We assume the silence means our work wasn't good enough.
Or that leadership isn't noticing, or that we are on the wrong path entirely.
Right, the silence just breeds paranoia. But right at the peak of that reasonable doubt, when all the logic points to packing up your desk and walking away, Conandri introduces a counterforce. The text describes resilience not as a roar, but as a whisper. It simply whispers, continue.
Continue. Just that one word.
Notice the dynamic there, though. It doesn't shout.
Yeah.
It doesn't scream at you like a motivational speaker on a stage. The reasons to quit are loud. The exhaustion is loud.
Very loud.
The silence of your boss or your clients is deafening. But resilience is just this quiet internal command.
That contrast is brilliant because it is true to the human experience. Your logical brain is presenting a loud, undeniable, multi-point presentation on why you should quit, highlighting the effort to reward deficit.
With charts and graphs.
Literally. But true resilience isn't trying to win a shouting match with your logic. It simply offers a one-word alternative. Continue. It doesn't promise an immediate reward. It doesn't promise that the boss will suddenly applaud you tomorrow. It just asks for forward motion.
Which brings us to a critical clarification, I think.
Yeah.
Because hearing the word continue can be dangerous if we misinterpret it.
How so?
Well, it's easy to think continuing just means putting your head down and smashing it against a brick wall over and over again until the wall breaks. But Kanandri explicitly warns against that. The text says, we must continue not blindly and not stubbornly, but faithfully.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. I have to admit, I've definitely had moments in my career where I thought I was being incredibly resilient, but looking back, I was just being stubborn.
Oh, we've all been there.
I remember spending, 3 weeks trying to force a specific software integration for a client that clearly wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Just because I refused to admit defeat.
What's fascinating here is the psychological distinction between stubbornness and faithfulness. From the outside, your 3 weeks of forcing that software integration looked like hard work.
It felt like hard work, too.
I'm sure it did. But internally, stubbornness and faithfulness are completely different engines driving the action. Stubbornness is an ego-driven refusal to adapt. It is continuing the exact same actions, refusing to take in new data or feedback, simply because your ego cannot handle being wrong.
Wow, yeah. That hits close to home.
And moving blindly is similar. It is moving forward without assessing the reality of the changing terrain around you. Both of those are incredibly destructive in a professional setting.
So if stubbornness is driven by ego, moving faithfully completely changes the framework. To continue faithfully according to this text means you are staying true to the core mission, even if the methods have to completely adapt.
Yes.
You have your eyes wide open, you see the massive effort required, you hear the uncomfortable silence from your industry, but you are anchored to something deeper than immediate validation.
Precisely. Faithfulness in this context implies a profound loyalty to an ultimate purpose, rather than a rigid loyalty to a specific plan.
You can change the plans.
You have to change the plan sometimes. It allows for absolute flexibility in your approach while maintaining an ironclad commitment to the destination. You are honoring that quiet whisper of resilience by saying, I will keep moving, but I will do so with intention, awareness, and a willingness to pivot when necessary.
And Kanandri gives us a very grounding definition of what this faithful continuation actually looks like in practice. The text states that continuing does not mean the path is perfect. It means your purpose is greater than your discomfort.
That is such a powerful line.
I want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a second. Think about whatever project, negotiation, or goal is causing you the most stress right now. That friction you are feeling, the late nights staring at your laptop, the frustration of miscommunications, that discomfort does not mean you are failing.
It really doesn't.
We have been sold this myth that if we are truly aligned with our purpose, the path will magically be smooth and effortless. This text completely shatters that illusion. The path isn't perfect, and it was never supposed to be.
It demands a radical acceptance of the reality of meaningful work. Discomfort is not an error message. It is a fundamental feature of the system.
A feature, not a bug.
Exactly. By stating that your purpose is greater than your discomfort, the text asks you to actively weigh those two elements against each other. Yes, the discomfort of your current project is heavy, but is the ultimate purpose heavier? If the purpose carries more weight, then the discomfort, no matter how severe or exhausting, cannot tip the scales to make you quit.
Here's where it gets really interesting. For me, this next concept completely reframed how I view a career timeline.
What part?
The author writes that continuing means understanding that growth often happens in seasons of invisibility. Seasons of invisibility. I want us to really dig into this because it feels so countercultural to how we work today.
It absolutely is countercultural.
Yeah.
We live in an era of hypervisibility. Look at modern corporate culture or social media. Everything is designed to be seen immediately.
We have to show what we're doing right now.
We have daily stand-up meetings to announce what we did yesterday. We have LinkedIn highlight reels. We have dashboards tracking real-time metrics. Society equates visibility with progress. If people can't see you succeeding right this second, the assumption is that you are stagnating.
Exactly, and that creates a tremendous amount of anxiety. If you are building something substantial, say you are writing a book, or you are an entrepreneur developing a prototype, or you are trying to completely overhaul the dysfunctional culture of your team, you aren't going to have a shiny, visible update every single day.
You just aren't.
You are going to spend a long time in the dark.
And that is the season of invisibility. If we connect this back to what we discussed earlier, that the silence after hard work, a very cohesive picture emerges. The silence is the auditory experience of that invisible season.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Think about the architecture of a skyscraper. Before a single floor goes up into the skyline where everyone can see it, months and months are spent digging downward, pouring concrete into the foundation. It is dirty, loud, difficult work, and to a passerby on the street, it looks like a giant hole in the ground.
Yeah, it looks like a mess.
It looks like zero progress. But without that invisible foundational work, the visible growth later on would collapse under its own weight. The text is urging us to recognize that invisibility is a necessary season, not a permanent state, and certainly not an indication of failure.
That structural analogy is perfect. And the word season implies something natural and cyclical. You cannot skip winter and get straight to spring.
You really can't.
But let's be honest, enduring that winter requires a very specific, rare type of endurance, which leads to the text's two requirements for navigating these seasons and building success. The first is showing up when motivation fades.
Oh, this is a big one.
This is another massive clash with modern work culture.
Yeah.
We are constantly told we need to find our passion or stay fired up. If you aren't motivated, you're doing it wrong.
This is a crucial point where we have to untangle the concept of motivation from the reality of action. Modern culture treats motivation as a strict prerequisite for action. The underlying belief is that you must feel inspired in order to do good work.
Right.
Kanandri's text argues the exact opposite. It explicitly states that success is rarely built in comfort, but rather it is built in persistence. Showing up when motivation fades requires the mature recognition that motivation is simply an emotion.
Just a feeling.
And like all emotions, happiness, sadness, anger, it is temporary. It will inevitably evaporate.
Right. If you only work on your goals when you are highly motivated, you are essentially a tourist in your own career. You're only showing up when the weather is nice.
Precisely. The true test of persistence doesn't even begin until the exact second your motivation disappears. That is when the actual work starts. Operating without motivation requires discipline and a commitment to the process itself, rather than a reliance on a fleeting feeling of excitement.
And that ties directly into the second pillar of persistence mentioned in the source. Staying consistent when results are slow.
Yes.
It is one thing to drag yourself to your desk when you aren't motivated. It is another beast entirely to keep executing at a high level day after day when the scoreboard simply isn't changing.
It's grueling.
It really is.
Right.
Let's say you're trying to implement a new workflow for your department. You put in extra hours, you train people, you build the templates. A month goes by and productivity hasn't spiked. In fact, people are still complaining. That is the slow result. That is the silence.
And that is exactly where most people abandon ship. Consistency when results are slow requires that faithful movement we discussed earlier. It is the deep understanding that the actions you take today are compounding, even if the ledger isn't updating in real time.
You have to trust the compound interest.
You do. If you demand fast results, you will inevitably retreat to comfort, because comfort provides immediate, albeit shallow, satisfaction. Going back to the old, broken workflow is comfortable because it is familiar. Persistence is the willingness to delay that immediate satisfaction for a much more profound, lasting reward.
I'm just thinking about how exhausting it is to hold all of that mentally, to navigate the silence from your peers, to push past the days you have zero motivation, to endure the anxiety of the season of invisibility.
It's a heavy cognitive load.
Massive.
Yeah.
When you are in the middle of a major project, it can feel like you are carrying the weight of the entire world, trying to play 4D chess and figure out how this grandmaster plan is going to unfold over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But then Kanandri does something beautiful in the text. He completely removes that massive pressure. He gives the reader this incredible sense of relief with one simple line. You do not need to have all the answers.
That sentence offers a profound psychological release. When we are deep in a season of invisibility, the logical brain goes into overdrive trying to predict the future. We try to calculate exactly how today's effort will eventually equal tomorrow's reward.
We want to guarantee.
We obsess over the 5-year plan, mapping out every single variable, trying to anticipate every possible roadblock. That cognitive load is utterly paralyzing. It creates a state of analysis paralysis where the fear of making the wrong move stops us from making any move at all.
You just freeze.
Exactly. The text gives you explicit permission to put that burden down. You aren't required to solve the entire equation today.
So if you don't need the master plan, What is the actual requirement? What do you actually have to do today? The text boils it down to the absolute bare minimum. It says, you just need the courage to take the next step. Not the next 10 steps, just the next one.
Just one.
So the next email, write the next page, have the next difficult conversation.
It scales down the massive, terrifying concept of persistence into a microscopic, highly manageable action. Taking the next step doesn't require a comprehensive strategy. It just requires a momentary spark of courage.
Just enough to move an inch.
It is an acknowledgement that while the entire journey might seem impossible from where you are standing, the very next physical or mental action is entirely within your capability. And courage is the exact right word to use there.
Why courage specifically?
Because taking a step without having all the answers, taking a step while you are completely surrounded by the season of invisibility, is inherently a courageous act. You are stepping into the unknown based entirely on the trust you have in your purpose.
It is the ultimate act of trust. And Kanandri closed the text with a promise, a tipping point that completely changes the narrative. The final sentence reads, sometimes the breakthrough is one decision away from the decision to continue.
That's the core of it all.
It really is. It frames the breakthrough not as a distant, abstract event that might happen years from now, but as something incredibly imminent. It is hovering right there, just on the other side of your next choice.
This raises an important question about how we define a breakthrough. In corporate or creative environments, we often think of a breakthrough as a sudden external event, a stroke of luck, a sudden realization by a client, a door flying open.
A big celebration.
Right. But the text defines the breakthrough as an internal decision. The actual breakthrough happens the exact moment you decide to continue despite the discomfort in the silence. The external results, the promotion, the successful launch, the applause, those are just the lagging indicators of that internal breakthrough.
The real shift already happened inside you.
By actively deciding to take that next courageous step, you are the one manufacturing the breakthrough.
So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize this whole journey we've just been on, because it is incredibly practical for whatever you are facing right now. We started by validating that very real, very logical feeling of wanting to quit when your effort is high and the reward is nowhere to be found.
And that's okay to feel.
Absolutely. We looked at the discomfort of imposter syndrome that creeps in during the silence after hard work. But then we listened for that whisper of resilience. We learned that continuing doesn't mean moving blindly or letting your ego make you stubborn. It means moving faithfully, driven by a purpose that outweighs the temporary pain.
Staying flexible but committed.
We explored the revelation that a lack of immediate results doesn't mean you're failing. You are likely just in a natural season of invisibility building the foundation. And finally, we lifted the massive burden of needing to know how it all ends, realizing that the only thing required is the courage for just one more step. Because that one step might be the exact decision that triggers the breakthrough.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this source material provides complete re-education on the concept of resilience. Resilience is highly romanticized in our culture as this loud, dramatic, triumphant event where you conquer all obstacles. But Kanandri proves that true resilience is incredibly quiet.
It's a whisper.
It is a solitary, faithful, and consistent practice. It is waking up and doing the invisible work, utterly unbothered by the lack of applause, solely because your core purpose demands it. It isn't a superpower. It is an everyday, practical discipline.
Absolutely. And it is a discipline you can apply right this second before this deep dive even ends.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building directly on the foundation Kanandri has outlined here. The text beautifully established that growth happens during the season of invisibility, and that a breakthrough is always just one decision away. But let's take that a layer deeper.
Okay, let's hear it.
What if that invisibility isn't just a waiting room you have to passively endure until the good stuff happens? What if the silence after hard work isn't merely an obstacle to overcome, but is actually the mandatory condition for the breakthrough to occur?
Oh, wow.
Without the silence, there is no space for that quiet whisper of resilience to even be heard. So the next time you finish a massive phase of hard work and are met with total silence, instead of taking it as a cue to pack up and walk away, ask yourself, is this just the quiet, necessary sound of my purpose taking root?
That is a brilliant question to carry forward into your week. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the power of continuing. We hope you take this framework with you into whatever challenge, project, or meeting you are facing right now. Keep listening for that whisper. Trust the season of invisibility and have the courage to take just that one next step. We will see you on the next deep dive.